What's up, guys? I'm finally I think I found my racket. I'm sure quite a few of you will be able to identify it just by looking at it. It's a Wilson Blade. Is that upside down? Yeah, Blade. The Wilson Blade. But which one do you think it is? Give you a second. Some of the hardcore fans might have guessed it by now, but just take a second, look at it. Which one do you think it is? Huh? Is that 16 by 19? Is it 18 by 20? Huh? I don't know. I got Toral and Wasabi in here, I'll tell you that, at least on the mains. Super good snapback. And I got Polytour Pro in the crosses, which actually kind of ruins the good snapback. So actually Polytour Pro's a really good string, but it just doesn't match the snapback of the Wasabi, so it kind of takes that away from it. So yeah, not a bad string, but probably not going to use it again in the crosses. Honestly, I haven't found a string I like more than the Toraline stuff recently. It's so frustrating because that company's weird to work with, but I really like their string. What can I say? Right, well, if you know me, and that means you know that I only hit with extended length rackets pretty much. If I'm gonna pick a racket for myself, it's gonna be extended length racket. I might demo one here or there, but if I'm gonna get serious about a racket, it's gonna be an extended length racket. So that is your final hint. Which blade do you think this is? It's the Blade 104. I can't believe I picked a head size bigger than 100. It just seems like such an amateur number. You know, like you're relying on head size for power or something like that. So off the bat and for a long time, I was kind of just rejecting rackets that are in this spec range. But somebody on Instagram brought this to my attention, and hopefully you're watching this video, because in a lot of ways it's thanks to you that I even bothered to try this racket. So thanks again. Yeah, 104 head size and super light. It's not the spec that I would typically even consider, but it's really light. And that is something that has always been an issue for me when it comes to getting extended length rackets, because they don't make them in such a way that it's actually very wieldy. In what I'm trying to say, well, why I picked that word, I don't know, but I'm just trying to say extended length rackets are generally not the easiest to play with. The swing weight is quite high, and sometimes they do weird stuff to make the swing weight a little bit lower, but the options are just so limited for good extended length rackets. I gotta stress that. And I have in a lot of videos, if you've watched a lot of my content, you know that I've complained about that consistently. But one of my other complaints too is that a lot of the extended length rackets just have a stupid head size, like 104 or something, you know. I was typically talking about stuff that's like 107 or 110 or 115, you know, really like crazy stuff. I mean, those rackets just look like a giant racquetball racket. They don't even look like a tennis racket anymore. Shout outs to that one Gamma racket, the Bubba or something, the Bubba Razor. I don't know, those are crazy. Rackets like that. But let me tell you right now, this is a very legitimate racket. Honestly, this might be one of the biggest sleeper rackets ever. And I seriously mean that, because a lot of the so-called sleeper rackets out there, they're kind of in a spec range that you would expect to be a pretty good racket. This one's not. It's really light. I mean, what is the stock weight here? Like 290 grams, I think? What does it say here? Yeah, 290 grams is the stock weight. That is 10.2 ounces for you Americans. And the swing weight is 316. I actually put a leather grip on this thing and I got the swing weight measured again. Guess what it measured? It measured out to 299 or something like that. I put a leather base grip on and it reduced the swing weight a lot. I didn't think that adding any weight to the handle could reduce swing weight, but I didn't understand how swing weight was measured. The pivot point, when you put it in that swing weight tool, you know, I don't know if you know what a swing weight machine looks like, but you kind of put it up against this thing and it clamps down here. And then you basically tilt it back. It'll be anchored like this. And then you let it go and it goes like whoop, 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 and it spits a number out. And that'll be the swing weight. Anyway, on those machines, the pivot point is actually somewhere around right here. So the pivot point being here means that any weight that's added here is going to reduce the swing weight. And I guess any weight that's here might increase it negligibly. Now, that swing weight might not be accurate necessarily. I mean, I think the one that I measured is, but I mean, the Tennis Warehouse says that the swing weight is 316. We all know that Wilson's quality control and just racket quality control in general, I'm sure the swing weight between 3 or 4 different models is going to vary quite a lot. So who knows what mine was before I actually started playing around with the handles and the weights and stuff. So yeah, anyway, 299, super low swing weight. And the reason that intrigued me so much is because with such a low swing weight, it means that I can actually customize the racket a little bit. I can put a little bit of weight in the head and customize the balance or the twist weight or just the general feel there's a lot of room to play with a swing weight that low and a weight that low, and it's really rare that you would find a racket that's already extended that allows that. Furthermore, if I so chose to extend the length of this racket even more, it should still be within a very manageable swing weight, and that is exactly what I did. I put the XTP Buttcap on here, got this 27.5 to 28. And I think that's where I'm gonna be happy with it, because the blade handles are actually pretty short, but this is just right. Check this out, I got a Yanex V Core 98 here, which was the runner-up, I suppose, for rackets I almost chose. And if I get the handles lined up, look at this. All right, this is a 27.5 Yanex. The grip is still higher up on the throat, it's longer in other words, than the blade is, even though I extended the blade a ½ inch. So that just goes to show you, I mean, this 28-inch blade probably has the same handle length as a 27-inch Yanex. The Yanex handles are so crazy long. It actually kind of bothers me because they're so long I can't even wrap them all the way up, which drives me insane. I think about Stan Wawrinka's racket and it just makes me want to like rip my mohawk out. It makes me so mad. So this handle length is actually just right for me. So the more I get to know this racket, the more I feel like it was made for me, pretty much. I'll tell you what though, if you've watched my videos, you know that I'm a bit of a string pattern, I don't know, I don't want to say connoisseur, but string pattern is a detail that I have paid a lot of attention to over the years. And I used to really think that I wanted an 1820, and I did at the time. I mean, it was to the point that I was kind of just anti-1619. I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but I essentially appreciated that an 1820 allows you, with such a dense string bed, to get a lot more life out of your strings, but also to go really low in tension and still have control. I just thought that's really cool. You can string in the low 40s to get some of that power and spin back, but still have great control. I was so fascinated by that as a concept. So it was hard for me to accept that some rackets just have a less dense string pattern despite having a lot of other specs that I wanted. So, I mean, if you're an 18 by 20 person, your racket selection is also very limited. So, I mean, imagine if you're an 18 by 20 person looking for an extended length rackets. I mean, is there any racket out there for you? Probably not, which is why I got an Angel racket one time, that TC95 from Angel, and I got it at 28 inches, but the swing weight was like 365 or something insane. This blade is, I haven't actually gotten the swing weight measured. I don't even know what it is. It's probably around 330 or something like that. And I got this extended to 28 inches with the XTP Buttcap. So, I mean, that's awesome that I can have that same length, but in 30 units of swing weight lower. I mean, that is a huge, huge, massive difference in swing. That is so much. That is like a whole, I don't even know. I don't have an apt comparison for whatever that is, but it's a big difference. It's almost like playing with a racket that maybe feels an entire ounce and a half lighter or something, you know what I mean? But it's swing weight, so it's kind of different, but yeah, it's a big, big difference. And 330 is already up there. That's already kind of at the limit of a lot of people's comfort zone. So, I mean, yeah, that's like what the Wilson Pro Staff Autograph swing weight is. It's heavy. That's a hefty boy. Anyway, let me get to the point. This is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in a good way. This is like the final detail that really allowed me to accept this big head size. So look, this is the V Core 98 compared to the Blade 104. It's quite a lot bigger. Like, if you look up close, I got the top of the heads matched up, okay? So I'm gonna move down. You see at the top here, the top crosses are almost starting at the same point. The Yanex one is actually a little bit higher. So in that regard, it's a little bit more open relative to the head size, okay? So you keep moving down. Right here is actually where the Yanex lowest cross is, and you can kind of indicate that from where my dampener is here. So it's actually like a whole cross and a half less dense on the 104, right? If you take the whole length of the head. So in other words, the string pattern is that many more crosses open across the length of the head size. Does that make sense? Is that a good way of expressing what I'm trying to say here? Basically, the bottom cross on the V Core 98 is close to where the 17th cross is on the Blade 104. So it's a lot more dense vertically. And actually horizontally, they're very, very close. I damn near might even say that they are exactly in the same position. So the density across the width of the head is actually about the same, which is great. It makes me feel like the string pattern isn't too open despite it being a really wide head. But here's where it got really interesting for me. So one of the reasons I liked a dense string pattern, as I mentioned, is that you're less likely to break strings because the string pattern is more dense. And that really, really matters in the sweet spot, which is where you should be hitting your ball most of the time. So the denser your string pattern is here, the less quickly you will break your strings. Now, this is where things got interesting. This is a much smaller head size, right? We're comparing a 98 to a 104. The thing about the Yanex is the drill pattern is actually quite dense. Like the crosses are a lot further from the throat. Like you see on the blade here, it's a lot lower. I just had this comparison earlier. So you'd think that the whole string pattern is more dense because the drill pattern is, but it's not. Look at this. So this is a caliper or a micrometer. I started doing this measurement around this area that I would consider to be the sweet spot, which is kind of a little bit above the center of the racket. And I just took a measurement of like 7 cross strings, right? So this is actually 6 cross strings, but that's fine. We'll do this. And 6 cross strings measures out to 6123 millimeters. So 63 millimeters. Now, if I do the same, it is also 63 millimeters. So in the area it matters the most, at least for the density of the string pattern, they are the same on the 104 and the V Core 98. But that's only for the crosses. What about the mains? So let's take 6 mains and measure that. This is the Blade 104. That comes out to... Someone's watching me right now and they're like, God, this guy's so obsessive. Yeah, I am. You better know it. This is just under 55 millimeters. Honestly, it's closer to 54. Call it 54 and a half. I don't want to be that obsessive. 54 and a half millimeters. Come on now. And this is actually more open, right? This way smaller head size is actually less dense of a drill pattern, is what I found out. And that's what really blew my mind. So that was 54 and a half. This is almost 61. We could call it 60 and a half. I forgot what number I said now, but that's about 5 or 6 millimeters different depending on what the last number I said was. I don't remember. I'll remember when I'm editing this video, I suppose, and looking back. Basically, what I found out is that the way that the drill pattern is distributed, it's actually more dense around the sweet spot on the Blade 104 than it is on the V Core 98. And that indicated to me that this racket is actually going to be less of a string breaker. And in some regards, it's going to offer me a little bit more control, which just sounds crazy because it's such a big head size. But the more you actually look at this racket, I mean, let's try to just do this. See, so this is kind of nice. I got the neon strings here in the crosses. Look how quickly the string pattern opens up as you get lower, right? If you look here, it's a bunch of nice little squares. They're all even little squares. And then as soon as you move out of the sweet spot, the crosses start going way further apart. Like now you got straight up rectangles going down here. So the string pattern opens up a lot on the lower half of the racket. On the Yanex, honestly, it looks pretty much the same across the entire freaking racket, except for like the last cross. I mean, honestly, you'd be really hard pressed to tell any difference except for the last cross. Also the last main, they all look kind of the same except for the last main and the last cross all over the racket. So it's not a very dynamic drill pattern if you want to coin it with some kind of terminology. One thing I will say, and this is maybe a little subjective, but also simultaneously kind of technical. Look at how the racket seems to change color if I do this. Look at that. Oh, it's pink and it's neon, and it's pink and it's neon. Okay, enough ADHD. It's really cool to have the crosses and the mains kind of close to the edge of the frame, I think, because it supports the string bed further away from the sweet spot, which I think just means it kind of cups or hugs the ball a little bit more. I think if you have crosses that are a lot further from the frame of the racket, it just doesn't cup the ball the same. It's just, you have this really dense net, and that whole trampoline effect, I think it's more evenly distributed across the string bed when you have the crosses and the mains a little more spread out, especially towards the edge. And I've always thought that. Just looking at rackets, I always felt like, These intersecting points of the crosses and the mains essentially act like a support beam, and the final ones are the final support beam. I think the further away that is from the center, the more it supports the entire string bed. The more uniformly the entire string bed is going to act as one whole trampoline for the ball. So in principle, I actually kind of prefer a lot of characteristics of this, and the only issue with that is it means that the string pattern has to be more open, except that this is such a dynamic drill pattern that they made the drill pattern really dense where it needs to be dense and super open where it doesn't matter as much. So I think that is probably the most brilliant part of this string pattern. And you see that on some rackets like the Pure Drive especially. That one is pretty famous for having a dynamic drill pattern, if you want to call it that. I don't think it's famous for that, but in my world it is. That's always a racket that I look to and I was like, yeah, you guys did something right here. So it's really cool to see that on a blade. So it's kind of taken notes maybe from the Pure Drive type of string pattern, but they've put their own little flair on that, and it's a way bigger head and the beams are much more thin. This is a way more comfortable racket than the Pure Drive for sure. I mean, the flex I think on this is like 61 or something. It's a low flex racket, but I get a lot of power with this actually, probably partly because the string pattern is pretty open and the head is big. So I get this crazy comfortable racket with quite a lot of power, but it also has really good feel because of the thin beam and the low flex. I mean, I've even found that the low weight of this racket kind of translates to a feel that I think is actually very intuitive for control. It's easy to overswing a racket with a little bit too much weight, especially when you're approaching the ball for me. Like I feel when you accelerate a racket that has a lot of weight, it just goes through the ball way more than you want it to sometimes. Whereas if I just sort of gently approach the ball with a light racket, the ball will actually compete a lot more with the momentum of the racket. So the racket won't just penetrate through the ball so effortlessly, which might sound like, oh, you're not getting any plow through or something. But when I want to get plow through, I can. It's easy for me to accelerate this racket head really quickly and get a ton of plow through and power. So it's not like I'm not getting my plow through. It's just, you access it a little differently than you would on a heavy racket. But on those slow balls, those touch balls at the net, those drop shots, I feel like I'm in great control of my racket head speed. Again, partly because it's so light, and if I over accelerate a little bit, because the racket's still moving slow, but if I over accelerate a little bit, no big deal. The racket's so light, it's not going to cause the ball to just fling off of my string bed like it would with a heavier racket, because the heavier racket, it's just going to go through the ball anyway. So that's kind of a subtle thing that I appreciate, but I did notice it, and that's one of my ways of actually appreciating some of the positive traits of such a light racket. I haven't played with a racket this light in so long. I mean, back in the day before I was making YouTube videos and stuff, probably 4 years ago, at least for YouTube, I mean, for my tennis stuff, YouTube, I was playing with an Autograph Pro Staff, and I had a custom paint job on that I did myself, which probably added, I don't know, 10 to 15 grams on it. I mean, that racket was super heavy. I think I had it hovering right around 13 ounces, which is well above the stock weight, probably well above the stock swing weight. I mean, I might have been using a racket that was like in the high 340s for swing weight, maybe almost in the 350s. I don't know. I never measured, but it was very heavy. And I eventually realized like I need to hit with something a little bit lighter because I'm kind of relying on the weight for stability too much, but also it's so hard to get that racket up and going when you really need to. I'm no stranger to heavy frames, and it's funny to come back to something that is so light. But things get interesting. The physics change when you're playing with a racket that is this long. You think you know certain things about swing weight or head size even, but it's not the same when you start extending the length. I mean, you just access the power differently. Your spacing is a little bit different, and I love it. I will probably never go back to a standard length racket. One of the reasons I switched, and this is an issue that I had on my Pro Staff, was that the handle is too darn short, especially on some of the Wilsons out there, for you to hit with a standard length racket. And I really liked Yanex for having the longer handles. But yeah, I've always been intrigued with longer rackets, and after I made the switch, I never really looked back. It's hard to go back to standard length when you get accustomed to the longer rackets, because you have more reach, and more reach is just always an advantage, especially on serve. And I'm kind of a tall guy. I'm 6'3". I feel like proportionally a taller racket might just be better for me. And that's a personal choice. Obviously you could say I'm tall, so I don't need a longer racket. That's for short people. But what if you're tall and you have a long racket? That sounds like broken. You know what I mean? That sounds super unfair. I'm down for that. I'm tall and I have a long racket. Oh, dude, game over. You know what I mean? But yeah, proportionally, I got kind of excited about it as an idea, but also it's just like, why is 27 the standard? You know, it's such an arbitrary number. It used to be 28, I heard back in the day, maybe in the wooden racket days. So, I mean, that was a totally different kind of tennis, but like those rackets were super heavy and they were super long. So like, that's not really intuitive, but yeah, make whatever arguments you want. You know, you end up choosing your own rackets at the end of the day, and hopefully you pick for yourself and you don't listen to too many people. You don't let the marketing get too into your head about what you think is good for you. And hopefully you have access and time to figure out what rackets work for you. But ultimately, I wanted to like extended length rackets, and I made a strong effort to switch and make the switch comfortable. And that's part of why I'll probably never go back. I put a lot of work into switching to an extended length racket because I really wanted to. That's ultimately what it was. And for the several years that I was playing tennis before that, I was just hitting with standard length. Wasn't really thinking much about it. I suppose the last thing I will say about the extended length actually has to do with the head size. When I first demoed this racket and I was kind of just blown away by how well it actually played, I have a video of my first time really hitting with this racket. If you want to check it out, I'll link it somewhere here. But this being a 104 head size, it's not an insanely large number. It's only 4 square inches larger than most racket head sizes, right? Most racket head sizes are probably 100 inches, maybe 98. So really, what is another 4 inches? But it got me thinking. I was thinking about being a tall person using an extended length racket. I'm thinking about how that's proportionally maybe appropriate or ideal. It made me think, you know, maybe the bigger head size is actually proportionally ideal for a longer racket. It wouldn't make sense to have a longer racket and the head size gets smaller, right? If anything, it would make sense for the head size to get bigger if it's going to change at all. So I think the 104 head size is actually brilliant. And the way that they distributed the string pattern on here is also brilliant. It's dense where it needs to be, and it's open where it doesn't matter as much. And having it open still allows for a lot of string movement without having to break the strings so close to the sweet spot as quickly, because they very cleverly opened up the string pattern in areas that the ball shouldn't really be hitting the string bed. And that means that the overall friction across the mains is reduced. So that's awesome. I feel like this dynamic drill pattern really answers a lot of the cons you might associate with a more open string pattern and offers so many other great benefits on top of that. Yeah, I really feel at home with this racket. I haven't even gotten to know it too well in this form. I've been demoing it for quite some time, back and forth in its 27.5 stock length. And I've always been trying to get away from it because I'm like, it's a 104 head size though. And it's so light though. And the string pattern is so open though. But I started to figure out, you know, the string pattern is not as open in the ways that I think. It's actually more dense than the Yanex V Core 98, which blew me away. And at the end of the day, I'm actually playing well with it. I can't deny it. My touch shots are good. I'm getting a lot of power. My spin is epic. And I'm having a great time with this racket. I just couldn't deny it. So I was trying to find other stuff like, nah, there's gotta be something else out there, you know? But it's this. It's the Blade 104. And honestly, if you are intrigued with extended length rackets, this is such a good extended length racket. And I don't mean like a beginner tennis player necessarily. If you are, that's perfectly fine because this is such a light racket. It has a forgiving head size. I think this is a really good beginner racket. You can grow a lot with this. But also, if you're a serious tennis player and you're a little bit anxious about making the adjustment to a longer length, this is a very legitimate tennis racket. And it answers so many of those anxieties that people have switching to an extended length. And again, guys, I really got to stress, extended length rackets are only a ½ inch longer. I mean, how much do you think that's going to mess your life up? You know what I mean? This is a 28 inch, I know because I modified it, but it's a ½ inch. Come on, it's really not that big of a deal. I think it's one of those things that you can adjust to within like a week, honestly. It's really not that big of a deal. There's so many days that we play tennis that you're just having an off day. You play through it and it gets better. Maybe you try the 27.5 inch racket and it kind of feels like you have an off day. Maybe you're mishitting a little bit or you're hitting it a little bit low on the sweet spot, and you will adjust and things will be fine. It'll just feel like an off day that you get through at the worst, I think. I mean, really, if you think that you can't adjust to it, I think that's completely ridiculous. Just give it a little time, like a few days, honestly. So there it is. My racket is the Blade 104, extended ½ inch by the XTP Buttcap for now. But I might get it professionally extended by Custom Tennis Rackets, CTR. I believe they're in Florida. I'm in talks with them to make that happen. And as I do that, I will definitely be giving this racket a custom paint job. I think I'm going to call it katana. Because blade is sort of sword-like, and I made this a little bit longer, so I want to call it katana because that's kind of a shout out to the fact that it's a blade. But I want this racket to be very much my own. So that'll probably be my personal touch. It'll say katana and maybe some kind of calligraphy font, maybe some other stuff too. I'm not going to over design it. I wonder if I'll put any details on the inside of the hoop. I don't know, but I'll talk it over with them. I've been taking this racket journey so seriously because I want to love a racket so much that I give it a custom paint job. That's like me marrying my racket in a way. That's me doing cosmetic work that makes it my own, and in a way that's like a real commitment to a racket. So that's part of why I've taken this journey so seriously. I think there's a lot of rackets that I could have switched to and I would have been fine, but I really wanted a racket that I absolutely loved, and I'm surprised that it's the Blade 104, but now that I'm here, it makes perfect sense. It just took some adjustments mentally on my end to realize the brilliance of this racket. If you guys want to check out a tennis shop that I am very appreciative of, you can check out Courtside Tennis. Super nice guys, family-owned shop. They have been super nice to let me demo a lot of their rackets, and they have been a key partner in me finding my tennis racket, and I got my Blade 104 from them. Let them know if you're interested in one. Let them know that Time for Tennis sent you. CourtsideTennis.com. You can give them a call, find their number on the website, emails, etc. Family-owned shop. Give them your business, you know? There's so many places that you can just buy tennis stuff for, I don't know, it's just not really a personal transaction, but this is a real family-owned shop, and they are shipping things for free over, I think, $99. I mean, their whole business model is totally competitive with any of the tennis retailers that you're shopping from. And if you're going to be buying some tennis gear, there's no reason not to support a family-owned shop. So if you're looking to buy some stuff, and you want to check this racket out, and you want to support some people that work with me, and you're in the market for some new gear, and you're tired of giving the big boys all your money, head on over to Courtside Tennis. Head on over to Courtside Tennis. They'll take care of you. Last but not least, shout out to my Isn't dampener. Yep, that's my dampener. You can check it out on Instagram at isn't.co. If you want to buy one, just DM me. We'll make it happen. And yeah, it's probably time to get ready for bed. So me and the Blade are going to hit the sack. I'm just kidding. All right, well, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, comment. You can follow me on Instagram. Some of my content on there is a little bit different. So yeah, I'll see you here. I'll see you there. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a nice night and play some good tennis. Move your feet. You could probably work on your footwork. We all could. It's the first thing to go. Every time I get tired,